Picture this, a smug, high-flying lawyer in a pristine suit, mocking a quiet black grandmother in a courtroom, thinking he's untouchable only to unravel a jaw-dropping secret that flips his world upside down. This isn't just a story, it's a roller coaster of pride, prejudice, and poetic justice that'll leave you stunned. Buckle up for arrogant lawyer mocked a black grandma in court only to learn she helped write the law, he cited. If you love stories that expose arrogance and celebrate unsung heroes, hit that subscribe button now to never miss a tale like this. Trust me, you'll want to be part of this journey. Arrogant lawyer mocked a black grandma in court only to learn she helped write the law, he cited. The courtroom in downtown Atlanta was a cathedral of justice. Its high ceilings and polished mahogany, benches gleaming under the soft glow of shit. The air buzzed with anticipation as the case of Johnson v. State Housing Authority was about to begin. At the plaintiff's table sat Marcus Hargrove, a 38-year-old lawyer whose reputation preceded him like a storm cloud. With his tailored navy suit, slicked back hair, and a smirk that could cut glass, Marcus was the darling of corporate law firms, known for dismantling opponents with razor-sharp arguments and a flair for theatrics. He thrived on the spotlight, and today, he was ready to crush what he saw as a frivolous lawsuit filed by a 72-year-old black grandmother named Evelyn Marie Thompson. Evelyn sat quietly at the defendant's table, her hands folded neatly over a worn leather satchel. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her simple navy dress contrasted starkly with the opulence of the room. She wore no jewelry, save for a thin gold cross necklace, and her eyes, sharp and knowing, betrayed a depth that Marcus didn't bother to notice. To him, she was just another obstacle in his path to another high-profile win. The case centered on a housing dispute. Evelyn had been fighting the state housing authorities' attempt to evict her from her home of 50 years, a modest duplex in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood. Marcus, representing the authority, was tasked with proving that Evelyn's claim to the property was invalid under a little-known state law, Statute 47B, which he'd spent weeks crafting into an airtight argument. He was confident, arrogant even, that this case would be over by lunch. As the judge, a stern woman named Judge Clara Whitaker, called the court to order, Marcus rose, buttoning his jacket with a flourish. "Your Honor," he began, his voice smooth as silk, "this case is a simple matter of law. The plaintiff, Ms. Thompson, has no legal standing to contest the eviction. Statute 47B, enacted in 1978, clearly states that properties acquired through certain federal grants are subject to state reclamation under specific conditions, which are met here. Ms. Thompson's refusal to vacate is frankly a waste of this court's time." He paused, glancing at Evelyn with a condescending smile. "With all due respect to the plaintiff, who I'm sure has a sentimental attachment to the property, emotions don't trump legal precedent." A murmur rippled through the courtroom, and Evelyn's attorney, a young public defender named Sarah Nguyen, shifted uncomfortably. Sarah was out of her depth, a recent law school graduate pitted against a shark like Marcus. She fumbled with her notes, her voice trembling as she began her opening statement. "Your Honor, Ms. Thompson has lived in this home for 5 decades. It's not just a house, it's her life, her community. We argue that Statute 47B was misapplied and that the housing authority failed to provide proper notice under federal regulations." Her words lacked the polish of Marcus's, and he leaned back in his chair, smirking, already envisioning the headlines. Hargrove crushes another case. The first day of the trial unfolded predictably. Marcus presented documents with flourish, citing case law and statutes with the ease of a seasoned performer. He cross-examined the housing authority's witnesses, bureaucrats, who droned on about grant conditions and property titles while casting sidelong glances at Evelyn, who sat motionless, her face unreadable. When Sarah called Evelyn to the stand, Marcus saw his chance to seal the deal. He stood, adjusting his cufflinks, and approached with the swagger of a man who'd never lost. "Ms. Thompson," he began, his tone dripping with patronizing charm, "you claim this property is yours because you've lived there for 50 years. But do you have any legal documentation to support that claim? A deed, perhaps? Or are we relying solely on nostalgia?" The word hung in the air, and a few spectators chuckled. Evelyn's eyes met his, steady and unflinching. "I have documents," she said softly, her voice carrying a quiet strength. "They're in my satchel." Marcus raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "Oh, a satchel full of treasures, I'm sure. Your Honor, I'd love to see these so-called documents." He turned to the judge, his smile mocking. "Perhaps Ms. Thompson has a map to buried treasure as well." The courtroom erupted in laughter, and even Judge Whitaker's lips twitched. Evelyn, however, didn't flinch. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a stack of yellowed papers, handing them to Sarah, who looked startled but quickly submitted them as evidence. Marcus barely glanced at the documents, assuming they were irrelevant. "Ms. Thompson," he pressed, "you're aware that Statute 47B, which governs this case, was specifically designed to address situations like your properties tied to federal grants that reverted to state control. Are you suggesting you know better than the lawmakers who wrote it? His voice was sharp now, his patience thinning. Evelyn tilted her head, her gaze piercing. I know a thing or two about that law, she said, her tone calm but firm. Marcus laughed, a short barking sound. A thing or two. Ms. Thompson, I've spent my career studying laws like this. Forgive me, but I doubt your expertise. The courtroom fell silent, the weight of his condescension palpable. Sarah objected weakly, but Judge Whittaker overruled, curious to see where this was going. Evelyn leaned forward slightly, her voice steady. I don't claim to be a lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, but I know what I know. And I know statute for 7B better than you might think. Marcus scoffed, turning to the judge. Your Honor, this is absurd. The plaintiff is clearly grasping at straws. But Judge Whittaker's eyes narrowed, her interest piqued. Let's see those documents. Ms. Nguyen, she said. The documents were a revelation. Among them was a letter from 1977, addressed to Evelyn from a Georgia state senator, thanking her for her invaluable contributions to the drafting of housing legislation. Another was a faded photograph of Evelyn, younger but unmistakable, standing alongside a group of lawmakers at the state capitol. A third was a handwritten draft of statute for 7B itself, with annotations in Evelyn's precise cursive. Marcus's smirk faltered as Sarah read the letter aloud, her voice growing steadier with each word. The courtroom buzzed, and Marcus felt a bead of sweat trickle down his neck. Your Honor, Sarah said, her confidence rising. Ms. Thompson was a community advocate in the 1970s. Working with the Georgia Housing Coalition, she was instrumental in shaping statute for 7B, particularly its provisions to protect low-income homeowners from predatory evictions. The law was never intended to be used against people like her. Marcus's mind raced. This couldn't be right. He'd spent weeks researching the statute, and nowhere had he seen Evelyn's name. He demanded to see the documents, flipping through them with growing unease. The annotations, the letter, the photograph, it was all real. Evelyn spoke again, her voice cutting through the tension. Mr. Hargrove, you cited statute for 7B, Section 3, to argue that my home belongs to the state, but you missed Section 4, subsection C, which says that properties occupied for over 20 years under a federal grant are exempt from reclamation, if the occupant can prove continuous residency. I've lived in that house since 1973. I helped write that exemption because I saw what happened to families like mine when developers came knocking. Her words were measured, but they landed like a gavel. Marcus's face flushed red. He scrambled to respond, but his usual eloquence failed him. This is irrelevant, he stammered. The exemption doesn't apply because he trailed off, realizing he hadn't read Section 4 closely enough. He'd been so focused on winning, on humiliating his opponent, that he'd overlooked a critical detail. Judge Whittaker leaned forward, her voice icy. Mr. Hargrove, are you suggesting you didn't fully review the statute you've been quoting so confidently? The trial took a dramatic turn. Sarah, emboldened, presented more evidence. Tax records, utility bills, and community petitions, all proving Evelyn's continuous residency. Marcus's witnesses, caught off guard, admitted under cross-examination that the housing authority had failed to notify Evelyn properly, violating federal guidelines. The tide had shifted, and Marcus's arrogance began to crumble. He tried to pivot, arguing technicalities, but his arguments sounded hollow, desperate. The courtroom, once amused by his theatrics, now watched him with pity. As the trial neared its end, a final twist emerged. Evelyn's satchel contained one last document, a notarized agreement from 1973, signed by the original grant administrator, guaranteeing her lifetime tenancy as a condition of the federal funding. It was ironclad, a detail the housing authority had conveniently ignored. Sarah presented it triumphantly, and Marcus sank into his chair, defeated. Judge Whittaker ruled in Evelyn's favor, not only dismissing the eviction but ordering the housing authority to pay her legal fees and compensate her for emotional distress. The